Got it.
Great. Hello. Thanks, Lex.
Thank you.
Are you out? Over and out. Hi. We are here today with Joshua Cohen, author most recently of The Netanyahus. Incredible novel, knocked me sideways. Also the author of story collection, Four New Messages. Also the author of incredible nonfiction collected in this tome, Attention, Attention, Attention. There's a little 4 repetition going on. Several other books, which I don't have handy to show you, and which I look forward to reading. This is actually the first of your books I've read. I have to admit, I was intimidated. I had heard of you. Your reputation preceded you, and I was totally intimidated. I was like, I can't read that guy. I thought you were the Jewish David Foster Wallace, and I was like, can't get into it. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. It's okay. Prejudice. It's prejudice.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's no, it's not fine. It's not fine at all. I take full responsibility for my prejudice. But I'm rectifying it now, and I just want to spend a little time talking about how incredible this book is. It's perfect. It's a perfect novel. That doesn't happen often. There's really great novels with a lot of good stuff in them, and they're worth reading. Perfect novels, I don't know, once a year, once every 5 years. I don't know. What do you think? How many perfect novels have you yourself ever read?
Perfect novel. Yeah, I don't
Perfect.
know. Yeah, but then you go back and you read them 5 years later, and you're just like, what was I thinking?
Maybe.
I don't know. I think that, when I think something seems perfect. I mean, it sounds like a really cop-out answer, but I think something seems perfect maybe in that way. I mean, I'm trying to kind of feel the spirit of your definition there, right? But I think something feels perfect when you're ready for it.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
you can't step in the same river twice.
Right. And I mean, like, I can't, there was this like horrible cat sitting apartment that I was in with like no air conditioning, and it was during a summer when, I mean, it was like 90-degree days just all in a row, and I would just kind of sit around, like disgustingly half naked, like no one wants to walk in and look at this. And I read, like a madman, Magic Mountain in this week, where the pages are basically transparent from sweat, and I mean, it looks like I dunked this book in the bath, but I really just sweated over it. And I read the entire, and I kind of emerged from that week which was this entirely immersive or submissive experience to just Thomas Mann talking to you from the top of this like snowy winter peak, this winter wonderland. And and I came out of that thinking, this is, there could be no book more perfect. And it's still an impressive, I mean, it's an amazing book, but there was an element of what's the word? Yeah, of it was the moment that infused it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you tried again, like on the beach in the Caribbean at some point, you might just be like, no thanks, Thomas Mann. P.S. Have you thought about putting that copy up for auction? It could be quite valuable at some point. Maybe they'll clone you from it.
Totally, or just it's a source of a lot of DNA. Yeah.
That could be a valuable tome at some point.
Totally.
Keep it safe.
Totally.
Gross. Awesome. All right. So, hey, it's fall. It's autumn right now. It's 2021. I have not changed out of my jammies. I apologize. I'm still not capable of fully participating in society. It's just like a gift to be able to talk to you here in my room without changing out of my jammies. It feels wrong to dress up for Zoom, doesn't it? It's so sad.
Yeah, does it feel wrong to dress it? I don't know. I'm still, frankly, I'm still thinking about this Jewish David Foster Wallace comment.
Okay,
I'm
let's
still
unpack that.
okay. I'm not going to let that pass because so I think what troubles me the most about it is not to be characterized as that in anyone's imagination. I think it's flattering to be imagined by anyone, right? Like, let's just begin with that. But I think that it's interesting. I know that for a lot of people, I think that someone like Wallace became a sort of, synecdoche for complexity, for difficulty, for the cerebral, for whatever you want to call it, for difficulty, right?
Yeah.
Whereas I think for me, he was always this. He was always an avatar of sincerity.
Yeah.
Because he was someone who sort of disavowed irony, and at a certain point even disavowed, and so I think he disavowed, let's say, literary irony, and then after a while it became a disavowal of his own sort of branded Gen X cynicism, right? And sarcasm, and this sort of transcendence into this utterly direct sincerity, this sort of hard on your sleeve sincerity. So I think to begin with, I can't think of anything less Jewish, right, than sincerity. And or at least saying what you mean without also encoding in that utterance doubt in the very possibility of meaning. And also so not only do I feel culturally removed from it, but I also feel generationally removed from it.
Well, I said that, and I had that prejudice not having read David Foster Wallace's fiction.
Okay.
It's just this idea of this giant book. I knew you had written a 1,000-page book.
Right.
And it was like, okay. And it was like that kind of like, well, I'm not going to approach that. I can't, I'm not. There was this, there's a music festival that goes on at the Mass MoCA, the Modern Art Museum in North Adams. And we used to go every year, and you like bring a blanket, you sit out on the lawn. And I will never forget, on the next blanket over one year is a guy in a lawn chair with Infinite Jest on his lap. Like he's out here at this festival. It's like he's like brought a book to read, and you could see that he was like on page 5, and he probably had been reading those 5 pages for years. But it was like important that he had that there. Like it was like his book that he was going to be reading on this beautiful day at this music festival on a lawn somewhere. And I always think of that guy when I think about publishing and reading and writing and author avatars as stand-ins for actual text, actual engagement, anyway. We were there for many hours. I don't think he made progress. I think he was not turning pages. But
there was a guy once in Vegas, and I mean this was some sort of like casino dining situation, right? Like a late
never been to Vegas.
Right. I mean, but it's casino time, so you're not sure what hour it is because you can't see outside.
No clocks.
Like there's no clocks. So it's this sort of like out of time dining experience in every context and in no context. And a guy comes and sits down. I'm there covering. Well, no, let's be clear. I'm in the casino to just be in a casino, but I'm in Las Vegas because it was the final at UNLV, the Trump Clinton debate.
Okay.
And I had been doing some election reporting, and I had sort of had enough of election reporting and Trump rallies and so on and so forth. So I find myself in this, and this guy comes in, and he walks in with this like huge, the Dover, I'm sure it's reprinted, but like the Dover edition of Ulysses.
Nice.
into this casino. And he sits down kind of like right next to me, basically, like pre-COVID, uncomfortably close, right? So even uncomfortably close for those days, and cracks it open to like page 1, right?
No.
Like, come down, Kinch, come down, you fearful Jesuit, right? And he just begins reading it, and I kind of look over him like, okay, you get all kinds in Vegas, whatever. And I go back to, whatever, the breakfast at midnight I'm eating. And then he turns to me and he's just kind of looks at me and he goes, I'm rereading it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good to know. Good to know.
Like just so he knows that it's not the first time he's turned to the first page of Ulysses, he had to let me know that he was rereading it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I wonder how he did. I wonder, what if he's like the preeminent Ulysses scholar in the world? What if he's,
Right.
Yeah.
I think he was probably more like the 529th ranked poker player in the world or something like that.
Not bad.
Yeah.
Still, nice work if you can get it.
Totally. Totally. Yeah.
Any thoughts on Ulysses?
No, I haven't read that. No, I just participated in this like this sort of Finnegan's Wake read with a lot of people who were far more qualified than I was to talk about absolutely everything.
Is that the 24-hour thing where they read it start to finish?
No, it was this project with like sleep scientists and Joyceans and to talk about sort of like the language of dreams, the language of sleep, what is like how the brain encodes memories in sleep, and I was the one fiction writer. So on one hand it was an honor, on the other hand it's a fucking nightmare, right? Because you have all these people who are talking about like MRI studies and memory retention and memory creation and new paths in neuroscience, and I'm just there being like, I think he just thought it sounded good, like, and so but I think what was kind of interesting, about that, because I hadn't really spent so much time with the book. So not only was I not qualified to talk about anything, I really wasn't even so qualified to talk about the book because I hadn't looked at it in a really long time, and I'd read it. Whatever you do to it, I'd done something to it when I was like too young. And I don't know. It was probably the most interesting and important thing I've read this year, because it felt like this year or these 2 years or however long it's been.
Ulysses.
No, Finnegan's Wake.
Oh, Finnegan's, yeah.
The flow of it, the uncertainty, but the odd logic, the way you have to kind of pretend that something is normal, and when you pretend it's normal, it starts to feel normal. I don't know.
You are an extremely prolific writer, I would say. Are you like even more prolific as a reader?
I would hope so. I've read more books than I've written.
Yeah, hopefully.
So I hope, that would be kind of amazing if that weren't, I've only read Magic Mountain and Finnegan's Wake. It's the only two books, I've only read those. I don't know. I mean, I read a lot, but I think that I read in a very crippled way these days. And so this feeling, I'm sure you do. And I like of this, this feeling of like, it's just, I think it just gets harder. I think this is for all adults, and it doesn't just have to do with writers, it doesn't have to do with reading. I think it just gets harder as you get older to give yourself over to pure pleasure.
Yeah, I think,
harder for me.
Well, I think it becomes harder, the more you read, the sort of higher your standards get, the pickier you get. And then like the same old shit doesn't work anymore. It's like,
Right.
it's like drugs, you know?
Mhm.
You gotta get like better and better and better drugs. You gotta, you know,
Right. Right.
and there's a lot of shit out there.
Mhm.
There's no shortage of things to be read, but once you've spent, you know, a lifetime, a middle-aged lifetime reading,
Right.
you know, it's like, oh yeah, like that's repetitive, that's derivative, that's luckily there's like an endless supply, not endless, but seemingly endless supply of books that by dead people.
Mm.
Um, so I, you know, we'll never get to the end of it, but I mean, that's why, you know, a book like this doesn't come along very often. Like this book had me, you know, just by the scruff of my neck from page one, pure pleasure,
Thank you.
brilliant. You don't need to hear me yank your chain. You know, it's been said. It's been said and said.
I don't know. Yeah, I
You
mean,
know.
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's all.
I think a lot of this, I think a lot of the, you know, what's your relationship um to all of the writers that I'm kind of rolling around with in that book?
Well, Roth was my god
Mm.
when I was sort of beginning to form as a writer.
Mhm.
Uh, and that's who I've always kind of and it, you know, and I loved, by the way, your review of the biography from Roth's perspective. Was that in Harper's?
Yeah.
That was fantastic. Um, somebody, I don't know who I was talking to, maybe Adam Wilson. I was saying this is like the Lost Roth novel. Like this feels like this is, you know, it's in that pantheon. I mean, it's that good, is what I'm saying. It's that good. I mean, subject matter aside, but you can't ever put the subject matter aside. So, somebody I was talking to was saying like, you know, you don't see that. You don't consider this to be like in conversation with Roth. And I was like, how is that possible?
Oh, I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't know that that's true. I mean, if, yeah, that either I misspoke when whoever I said that to, you know.
Or somebody took it out of context or
Yeah, I mean, I think what it was that, you know, this was a really conscious attempt to do that.
Mhm.
You know, so it's not like this thing is an unconsciously haunted by Roth. It's not like this thing, you know, like I wasn't or I accidentally wrote a Roth novel or something like that. I mean, I really I had this weird relationship with Harold Bloom.
Yes.
I don't even know if I would call it a relationship because because he was close to death. He was very ill. Um, and he's an enormous personality he had things to say, and I wanted to, you know, to hear them. And it was not my job to like make myself known to him, right? I was there to kind of, you know, do you want to see the last fragment of the True Cross? You know, come check it out, you know, and then, you know, get back on the train. And you know, I think there's a lot of dust that has to settle around Bloom's legacy. There's also a lot of, you know, there are a lot of problems, there are a lot of weird spots, there's a lot of but the these are all, I think, very superficial distractions from a few interesting idea, or like truly not like revolutionary ideas that he spent at least some of his career kind of advancing. And one of them is the application of, you know, the reabsorption of psychoanalysis into literature with his, you know, theories of influence. And I just, you know, I wanted to write a book that was kind of about influence, you know. And there were a lot of books, and I'm sure you know these things. I mean, I get sent them. You know, these are the kind of books that I end up buying for, you know, certain of my cousins that my mother says, oh, he's smart or she's smart, and then you buy this book and the test, you know. But it's like these books that are like, you know, how Proust changed my life, or like, you know, reading the Brontes through whatever, or, you know, like this kind of biblio-memoir thing.
Lolita in Tehran.
Lolita in Tehran, right, which like very expressly foreground these questions of influence. You know, a very, I think, good version of that is Jeff Dyer's, you know, Out of Sheer Rage,
Yes,
right? Lawrence.
Yes.
And so so these things were in my head, but I wanted to write a book about influence that wasn't necessarily about, you know, a certain writer or a certain or a certain book, but was actually about like a certain culture that now seems to be compartmentalized. You know, I mean, it seems that there is a rounding off of a certain period. And I saw this kind of a certain world disappear, not just in the death of Roth or something like that, but frankly, much more. I mean, much more impactfully in the deaths of grandparents and great uncles and great aunts, and just, you know, an entire part of a family whose historical experiences were markedly different from my own, and whose cultural contexts were as well. And I kind of felt like, you know, that all of that needed some, it needed some way to, some frame found to put that, to write about it. And so, you know, I mean, this is a long way of answering the Roth thing, but it was like, if I could put those tropes into their historical context and use them at the time in which they were kind of first, like, inculcated in the people who then later wrote them down, right? Then I could kind of see how we got from there to here, because I knew that I wanted to get to here. But, you know, in many ways, it's too easy to kind of see culture and how culture progresses as a series of like X ended and then Y began, Y ended and then Z began. And I wanted to actually show what I think is a much more faithful rendering of how cultural change happens and how influence is both absorbed and denied.
Influence absorbed and denied. Oh yeah. Can I ask you like an amateur question?
Sure.
At the very end, credits and extra credits.
Yeah.
You know, I went back and forth with this. I mean, it's such a, you know, if the book ended where the narrative ends, you know, before this epilogue, I would have been satisfied. I would have been satisfied. It would have been a great book.
Dayenu, yeah.
Dayenu, but this last, you know, 10 pages, I went back and forth thinking, oh, okay, that's a fascinating epilogue, and thinking like, well, no, it's just part of the narrative, you know. It's do you have an opinion on that? Do you have a prescription? Like, you know, how do you prefer that last 10 pages be read?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I like that they're read in many ways, in any way that anyone decides to read them. I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm not, I think that I mean, I think there are a lot of different questions there. There's like there's the amateur question of what's true and what's not.
Yeah, which I don't want an answer to that.
Right. And then there's the, you know, but then there's the much more specific, which is I think the one you're asking, which is, you know, how are we supposed to relate this to the fictive plane of the rest of the book?
Which actually doesn't matter either, but I just
right,
like,
but I mean, I think, you know, I think I'll try to answer this like in a concise way, but I think it's the difference between, you know, having had the experience of growing up around people who talk to me about historical, quote unquote, historical events, which for them were called real life. and things that they lived through and things that they experienced, and understanding that their experiences came to me through stories, right? Through a story of how it felt to live through something, and then looking at the way that we absorb in things now, where it's much closer to what was the war? Well, like, look at Wikipedia, right? Or what, like Zionism, go spend your time on the Wikipedia for Zionism, right? And of course, what's missing from all of these things is the felt or lived experience of the people who incarnated these ideas, who betrayed them, felt betrayed by them, gave their lives for them, gave, and so on and so forth.
In different contexts.
In insanely different contexts. And I really wanted to have these types of histories cheek by jowl in a book. So like the beginning of that last section, which is, sort of only slightly more sophisticated, like a Wikipedia almost, the idea that all of this can be encapsulated. Very briefly, I think I want people to initially take that as a almost as a moral shock, like, oh, I understand that packed within each one of these declarative sentences is an entire universe of stories, is an entire universe of passions, is an entire universe of disappointments and thrills that we will never have access to because it's been historicized. And so I think that element of it, I wanted that feeling to come out.
It does.
So yeah,
it does. Oh my God! It really, it's you construct this extraordinary narrative. It's beautiful. It's funny. It's smart. It's devastating, and then you pull out the rug in this incredible way.
Well,
It's not like a trick. It doesn't feel cheap. It doesn't feel like OPS. It's fantastic. It could not be more organic. A perfect book feels like it has always existed, and it feels like it was simply like plucked from the ether in some effortless way, which I know couldn't be further from the truth.
Well, I mean, I mean that, you're very kind, and I think
I'm not though. See, I'm not at all. I'm a little bit.
I mean, I think that one of the things that on one hand, I said to myself, let me do the two stupidest things I could think of, which was write a campus novel and write a historical novel, and like a campus, like two things that seem the furthest from my personality. I did not enjoy school. I did not spend a lot of time in school, and the historical novels to me always kind of reeked like Father's Day or Mother's Day presents, like they just and that was never my, or like a sort of a BBC costume drama, and it was never that was never my but I think actually I got over this I got over this feeling that I had to plot. And I think that in a way, what seems to me to be successful in the book is the way in which it really is a simplistic anecdote that just sort of reproduces itself almost fractally. And I think I was always ashamed of the anecdote in a way.
What anecdote?
I think I was ashamed of everyone who tells you that they have a great idea. I don't know if
Oh yeah.
Like everyone tells you they have a great idea for a book.
Yeah.
It's always an anecdote.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, you got a page at like, what's next? Right?
How hard could it be? Go for it. Yeah. Go write that book.
Right. And then when you get to the end of the page, then you call me.
And you're screwed.
And I think also I growing up kind of surrounded by a lot of older people who either were funny or thought they were funny, especially a lot of like, men who demanded to be listened to, right? Who had jokes they had to tell you, and you had to listen to their jokes, right? And I think that so I was very comfortable with like the world of the anecdote. I think it's also very much from like from Jewish storytelling. Jews aren't it's not, Jewish culture is not a culture of novels. It's a culture of like when I say Jewish culture, I mean I include even the so-called sacred writings. It's a culture of anecdotes or folk tales or parables or tiny kind of microcosm narratives that are supposed to or that are intended to signify beyond their bounds through allegory or parable, but they're not really plots. And in fact, like if you look at the longest maybe plotted major Jewish work early on is the Bible.
Exodus
it was the Torah, but about 3/4 or not 3/4, 4/5 of the way through, it breaks down. And like the story kind of they just give up and they just decide to just leave them in a desert and repeat the laws, which like any novelist who thought that they could end a book like that is either an idiot or a god, right? And so I think that I had but then of course I'm a reader of novels. I think about plots like all writers do, and you think, how can a plot work? And I think I was always ashamed of this tendency in me to just string together anecdotes or string together these, and because I thought it was unsophisticated.
Like a weakness.
I thought it was a weakness because everyone does it.
Right. Anyone can do it. Anyone can do it.
Right. And I think that this was just a moment when I mean, it was kind of written at like a real moment of desperation where I was just like, okay, let's just sort of tell a long joke and see what happens.
I think desperation is a really good place to start from when you're writing a novel or any, I mean, that is like a motivating foundational emotion, I think can yield really, like who's ever sat down to write a great book, like thinking like, well, I could write, or I could not. I could tell this story, or I could not. It's like, if you don't tell this story, you're gonna die is the best way, really. Speaking of which, have you read Dara Horn's essay collection that came out this year?
Yeah.
I really loved that a lot. And it felt like that. It felt like a book that was coming from a place of real desperation and like, okay, I don't want to write this book. I don't want to do this, but I have to. So here we go.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's I mean, I think what she did with that is I think far more courageous than novel writing in a way.
I mean, it depends on the novel.
Right, but I mean, like, I think it's the expectation of a novelist to be ignored or misunderstood anyway, right?
Yeah.
And because to begin, and especially to have one's political intentions be ignored or misinterpreted or not even recognized, frankly, right? Because especially it's like, if you have a political idea, you know how to write a clear sentence. Why are you hiding it in a story?
Right.
Why are you obfuscating its terms?
Right.
And so I think that I have enormous difficulty writing nonfiction that I believe in. I mean, this is why I have to write it in the voice of Philip Roth, right? It's you know, or I end up adopting different sort of personalities or guises or tasks or perspectives, because I don't think I would be able to so publicly and nakedly declare myself in the way that I think that she does in that.
It's true. And that's why good nonfiction is, it's hard and rare.
But I also think it's a personality thing. I mean, I know from another part of my life, you know, which is not so compartmentalized, but it sometimes feels that way, from the journalism world, which I've done in the reporting world, where, you know, you also have to really like fighting.
Yeah.
And, you know, you have to like getting in the trenches and throwing elbows and insulting and being insulted.
Right. Like Twitter.
Like Twitter, or whether you're participating or you're a subject of it, like, it's just, you know, you have to almost thrive on that. And I think that's a very different, that's just a very different environment than a novelist can expect to live in or would want to, you know?
As a novelist, I feel like I'm a performance artist. Like a voice of a novel is like a performance. I'm like enacting this. I'm inhabiting it. I'm a, you know, puppeteer or an actor, or you know, whatever. And that I might be using some of what I know or what I have, you know, to bring that to life. But that I'm not, you know, I am completely obscured. I am completely obscured.
Right. And not only is your eye completely obscured, but, like, you know, the idea that you are a representative Jew or a representative woman or a representative what is, like, it's insane, you know. The idea that, like, a person who would be crazy enough to write something would be representative of anything is, or, like, you know, in the sense of, like, if not an average, then at least a even a collection of its best traits is insane, right? And so I think I share your performative aspect, but I also there's also a marginality to it that I think is also important. Also gives you that safety.
Like, I mean, the worst thing that could ever happen to a novelist is to get famous. That's like a nightmare.
It's to get famous, or I think, or to become identified with a particular group or ethos or politics
or movement
or call it whatever you want to call it. I mean, that's it's
But people do have a hard time. I mean, the few people who read novels, a lot seem to have a hard time with that idea, and they if they connect with your fiction, one's fiction, seem to be very eager to identify you ever after with that story, or that, you know, oh, you're the person who blah 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 blah, I know all about you, you know. I read
I mean, we all have exes. You know, I mean, like, I think that you know, there is an element that I think is, like, decidedly American, right? And it's
always an insult. That's never not an insult.
No, I don't. Well, I mean, you know, I mean, is it as bad as decidedly Soviet?
No,
you know, so I think but maybe it's an insult, but I also find it poignant, right? In the sense of, you know, which might be condescending, but we're only condescending ourselves here. It's the idea that reading literature is self-improving. It's either a way of you know, self-improvement, class ascension, or it has something in common possibly with exercise or eating your vegetables, you know, that there is something that there is an exchange, there's a value exchange, there's valuta and a fungibility between the time and attention that I put into something and the value that I extract.
The reward.
Right? The reward. And I think that's the way literature is sold to people in school. It's the way it's sold uh, 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 by parents, if they're good enough parents to introduce literature to their children. They usually introduce it in that way, which is the wrong way. And
Wait, what's the right way? I'm
I don't
asking as a parent.
I don't know what the right way is. I mean, I think it's certainly, I think it's much closer to, this is a place where you can be alone
Mm-hmm.
and be very intimate with someone else's mind, and um, imaginally inhabit another experience in life, and that it is um, a space apart.
That's beautiful, actually. That's very beautiful. I'm serious.
Well, I mean, I think it's better than, like, you know, for you have to read these books because if you don't, people will think you're stupid, or you'll never get into college, or, like, you know, you won't grow up strong and have, you know, good teeth and bones. You know, I don't know.
Or
Like,
what I did last night, which is I will buy you those sneakers you want if you read that Ray Bradbury book.
Totally,
which is terrible, terrible.
totally.
But then I did do a dramatic reading for my 12-year-old from McDonald's.
Okay.
The story in which the writer is trying to write the story without using the word McDonald's. Phenomenal. He was really impressed. He was like, "Man, what a vocabulary! That guy's got an amazing vocabulary." I was like, "Yeah."
But I think because of this tendency, right, to treat literature as something that is, again, like improving, or that, as you say, like there's a reward, there's, you know, sneakers, or a better job, or a better mate, you know, at the end of that tunnel, right? I think is, you know, not only is it, I think, harmful to literature, right? And sort of miscategorizes literature in people's minds.
And literature does not need to be harmed. Literature needs no more dumping.
But what I think it does is, I actually think it especially when these things become really installed as dogma in our society, like these things begin influencing writers as well.
It's true, right? And bad literature results.
Yeah.
Literature suffers.
Yeah. And so when we talk about, like, you know, what are the things that that literature, you know, like, what are the uses of fiction, right? It's like, you know, the problem is always just with the word use,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and I think as I understand more what it really means to dedicate your life to making something useless, I think that becomes like a pretty important, you know, moral education for myself. You know,
Awesome.
I guess.
Awesome.
So does your kid get the shoes?
I don't know. We'll see. No, but you know, that was the wrong setup. I mean, you know, he should earn the money if he wants to get the shoes, and he should read the book because it's a great book. And
what Ray Bradbury is it?
I don't know. We were talking about the Velt.
Okay.
You know that story? It's really good. It was written in the 50s, and there's like an entertainment center as part of the house, and the kids are addicted to it. And
Okay.
When the parents threaten to turn it off, the kids are like, no, 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 no. And the parents are like, come on, we'll go do something else, you know?
Right.
And the kids are like, no, no, no. And then it ends with the kids killing the parents, basically, so they can keep watching their simulation.
Right. And then it ends with sneakers if you get that far. Yeah.
It's
like
you know, I have to.
Yeah.
How did you become a reader? I mean, what were you constitutionally misfit? Were you, you know?
I mean, yeah, I think I defined that, you know, that books are the space apart because I needed one of those spaces.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I needed a place in a very kind of enmeshed and large family to hide out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I grew up in a fairly anti-literary, you know, I'm in Atlantic City, New Jersey. It's, you know,
Oh, right.
you know, I didn't, so it was a place to hide, I think. And then I found out that, that there were books. It's that odd thing of a parent wanting you to read and then happy that you're reading. But then when you see that they are slowly registering that reading is making you even more antisocial, and that you've also discovered that there are books that they would prefer you not to read, and that you're reading them, it suddenly becomes an interesting fulcrum to serve a parent their own medicine. It's sort of like, oh, you told me to do this, and now you're angry at me?
Right.
Or I should read, but I shouldn't read to the exclusion of any other social life, and I shouldn't read that book, and I shouldn't become a writer, but I should read because reading is, and it's like, it was a absolute, I mean, it wasn't the first hypocrisy I discovered, but it was probably the most potent hypocrisy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because reading in theory is very different from reading in practice. Reading is an idea. Reading is, there's so much kind of bullshit out there about like read. Like what? Remember there was like a public PSA kind of thing that was going around when I was a kid, like in the early 90s, like the more you know, like read books, kids. But it's not really if everybody was a reader, then like society would fall apart.
Right. I mean,
I
I also think that like there was this, they never showed in like the LeVar Burton PSA world of, reading Rainbow, right? There was never an actual depiction of what a writer truly looks like, who is like a person who has substance abuse issues, rarely gets dressed, shaves erratically, is in debt, divorced, messily so, estranged from children they probably never wanted to have in the first place, and like
hate them forever.
Right, and this was what literature did to them, right? and this is what happens when one reads, right? And the first warning that I got from this was, I'm reading at a certain age and pretty young, and I couldn't keep the light on, so it's like, you're going to ruin your eyes. So it's the warning, you're going to ruin your eyes, you're going to get glasses. And I had to get glasses, and it's like that came true, and but no one I was around was equipped to tell me, if you continue doing this, you will never be happy, right? You will never be able to express joy or any positive emotion. It will be very difficult for you to express love and to allow yourself to be loved. No one said this to me. And I think that this, that was a big dereliction. But I mean,
if they had said that to you, do you think you would have changed course? Like, okay, I'll go join the football team?
I think I would have understood that someone was talking to me seriously.
I just came across this line that seems apropos. To have written, keep the masses happy. Unhappiness should be the privilege of the few. You wrote that. To have written a book that no one has ever read is like having a face that no one has ever looked at. Okay, sorry. Just a random moment that happens to have been open on my desk while you were talking. But how are you doing? Are you okay?
I'm great.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there is some consolation to having figured out all of the things that I should have been told. Like there is some consolation to having taught yourself, as opposed
learned all the lessons the hard way.
Right. Or just learn them on your own, as opposed to, come to an academic understanding of what ruin is. I think that I think I'm doing okay. I don't know. I mean, I don't like the parts of the world that I understand, but the parts that I understand are shrinking by the day. So,
There's a great Mary Ruefle quote, like, when you're young, you think you understand the world, but you don't understand yourself. And when you get old, you understand yourself, but you do not understand the world.
Okay.
Like
I believe it. I mean, I think, I think that there's some, I mean, I'll share, I have some lingering anger, I think. This all of the noise of this last pandemic year and a half, where everyone is complaining,
Mhm.
when the truth is all they were sort of turned into writers who don't write.
Mhm.
They were just all forced to stay at home,
Mhm.
again, wear sweats, right? And forced to create their own discipline, create their own motivation,
Find meaning.
find meaning, right, and it resulted in this kind of cataclysmic outpouring of narcissism that far exceeded any of the output of any writers ever accused of narcissism, right? And not to mention that those effusions were always accomplished with a significant degree of artistry, right? Which these like pandemic complaints kind of weren't. I kind of feel like I'd like to welcome the rest of the world to what it feels like to do what we do, and to say we're not going to judge them for being so amateur at it, and that we know they're new here. We're gonna make it easy on them.
No, we're not.
Well, we're gonna pretend, right? Like whatever. But the thing is that like now that they are where we are, right? They have to produce at our standard.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't, they're out and they go back to the office.
Get better at kvetching, or shut up.
Right.
Kvetch with artistry, or be quiet.
Or you go back to the office. And I think that to see so many people who were set adrift by the look, mourn the dead, fear for yourself, fear for your loved ones, protect yourself, blah, blah, blah. But the ones who suddenly felt adrift from meaning, and who couldn't recognize that their meaning consisted of an office, or of a
cocktail hour,
right, happy hour, right? I don't know, like really, I had much more sympathy for them when they didn't claim, when they didn't presume to be in my position.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating. So, what are you working on? May I ask? What do you got on fire?
I'm working on I have this one book coming out that is just a thing I edited, which is sort of a anthology of work by Elias Canetti, sort of about I mean, it's from every kind of part of Canetti's career, but it's really about fascism and the politics of populism and of crowds, and but that's coming out this next year. But I'm working on a novel, and I don't know. We'll see what happens. I was reading a thing about well, how do I put this? I feel like the world won't be able to sleep until it knows my thoughts about Jeffrey Epstein.
Wow.
Let's just
oh my God. Bring it on. Bring it on.
I feel like there is a and not just him, but Ghislaine Maxwell, her father, who, fascinating, certainly very much resembles the man she chose.
Yeah.
Right. And there is I found myself like I think everyone else, sort of drawn to that cluster of stories, but not only that, but also the way in which it becomes a story engine and a screen of projection for so many people, and the absolute what's the word, the unerring tendency of people, right, to ignore the most obvious answers to everything, which is that the world is not governed by the order of conspiracy, it's governed by stupidity and chaos.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of about, models of stupidity and chaos. Yeah.
Sounds amazing.
I think so.
No pressure. Just do your thing, man. Do your thing. Just say
I found out that my aunt had an acquaintanceship with Jeffrey Epstein. They were involved in some they were involved in the same like life extension workshop group. And that was an enormous revelation, because I consider my aunt to be, I mean, she's a lovely person and I love her, but she's legitimately crazy. And so, I mean, that was an interesting window.
Life extension as in like caloric restriction, like cryotherapy, like what are we talking about?
This one was, I mean, I think that she's certainly into, yes, I think she would be into all of them, and she has been into all of them. This was, I think, specifically something to do with magnets. It has something to do with the operation of magnetism on the joints,
okay,
in order to restore youthful flexibility. I don't know. I mean, yeah. Magnet. All right. I can assure you of one thing: the magnets were not cheap.
Oh my God. All right, stay in that room with the curtains drawn till it's done, because we need it.
Yeah, right. Well, if you find me hanging from my doorknob.
Oh, God forbid.
It was neither the Clintons, nor the CIA, nor the FSB, nor the Mossad, nor was it suicide. It was merely an autoerotic asphyxiation attempt on her.
It's really fucked up. Thank you. I promised you this wouldn't go over an hour. You are a prince. I'm so grateful. And I feel like I could talk to you forever. And hopefully I can through your extraordinary work, which I will continue to consume. This one, I'm excited. This is a big book. This is gonna get me through the winter.
Thank you so much for everything. I really
thank you, and really good luck. And I say that selfishly because I'm hungry for that new novel.
Well, send me your Epstein theories. Let's or as we say in this world, see you on the listserv.
See you on the listserv. I don't have any Epstein theories. I do have a little bit of an obsession with Jennifer Grey's nose job. However, I don't know if that can be worked in somehow. I'll think on it.
Let me know.
Yeah. Thank you so much, and thank you for your work.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Take care. Bye.